In this video, we're going to talk about the Sega Genesis Mini 2. And I got nothing for an intro. Sorry, folks.
Bog Panda.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us on Bog Panda. I'm Kelly at KELLYTHUL on Twitter and Instagram.
I am Dr. Mike at Official Pagan on everything. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, leave a comment, turn on notifications, say a prayer for Dana Plato, and check out the merch store.
Sounds fair. It's a good deal. So, kind of excited to do this, maybe a short show, but there's been a couple things come out on this, and we wanted to talk together about it a little bit. The Sega Genesis Mini 2, which has had kind of an interesting history already.
Yeah.
There's kind of a feeling that it was only going to be released in Japan. Then all of a sudden it pops up on Amazon. And then there's some interesting game selections. And then there's some interesting things now about how available it's actually going to be. So I think I know. Well, how excited are you about this, Mike?
Extremely, sir. Extremely. The first Sega Genesis Mini was actually probably my favorite of the mini consoles. The one I got the most excited about was TurboGrafx 16, just because that wasn't super widely available in North America. That was really a Japanese system that we kind of got here, but most of the games never officially made it to the US for TurboGrafx 16. So unless you were paying expensive import prices for games, you only got a tiny selection here. So I was excited for that only because it had a huge selection of games that, unless you played on some illegal things called emulators and ROMs, which we don't know anything about here, you really didn't get an opportunity to play those games. But honestly, in every way, the Sega Genesis was the best mini console. The build quality was excellent. The controllers were perfect. And it really came from them looking at what Nintendo and Sony did. Nintendo did a really good job with their mini consoles. So Sega looked at all of that and just kind of one-upped them by adding more games and more features than they had. And they also looked at every ball that Sony dropped and then tripped over and then slapped their fans in the face with, and here's the thing. I actually like the PlayStation Mini because I paid $15 for it. So I really like it because for $15, it's a great mini console. It's also incredibly easy to add ROMs to it because of the type of emulation that they used. You can literally just put ROMs on a USB stick and stick it into one of the control boards, and it will recognize those games. So it's the easiest thing to add more games to, but it is garbage otherwise if you're not adding games, and especially if you paid the original price, which I think was like $130 or $140 or something like that for it. And yeah, it was bad. So they really learned the lessons of those. And another cool thing with it, which a lot of these systems did, had, little hidden things and stuff like that. Sega had not just classic games on there, incredibly rare games, a brand new official Sega Genesis game published by Sega. So while there have been tons of indie games over the years, there hasn't been a published for Genesis game by Sega in decades at this point. A brand new game. It came with the Sega version of Tetris, which they themselves for years claimed didn't exist, even though there was a handful of games out in the wild, probably because they were wisely trying to avoid the super long drawn out court battle between Nintendo and Atari over who had the rights to that for the 8-bit consoles. So Sega was probably just like not worth it and took a step back from that one. But it also had hidden games on there, which a few of them had, and a really cool feature that I liked. You could go in and change your region and you would actually get the alternate versions of games from different regions, which in some cases was just maybe a different title or different cover art, but in some cases was completely different games. So for example, in Europe, particularly in Germany, the Contra games were all banned. So Konami, not wanting to waste that, reskin them as totally different robot based games. So you get to play Contra as the German robot fighting game instead of the game that it originally was. So you actually get these more weird, obscure versions of games and stuff. It was just a really great console all around.
Cool. And it looks like they're kind of staying on pace with the Mini 2. It's going to be a little bit smaller, more compact, but as good a hardware or better. The controllers appear to be of similar kind of quality to what came out initially. But one of the interesting things is that for the Mini, and I'm assuming you can still go out in the wild today and every once in a while stumble across a Sega Genesis Mini, and it's going to be, I don't know, $50 now, maybe 50, 60. But they're still out there. There were a lot created and then put out. A lot of the mini consoles you'll see at Best Buy and stuff like that. It was one of those. It was there on a pretty regular basis. This one, which we originally thought was only going to be available in Japan, and now it appears there'll be some level of U.S. access. It's an Amazon exclusive. It's not shipped by Amazon, but it's an Amazon exclusive. But I've just seen a couple sources say that expect a very low quantity of those. But last I checked, if you go to Amazon, it's not saying sold out. So you could still put your money down on one of these if you want. But what are your thoughts about a low inventory count of these?
Seems weird. So they did say, and the reason it seems weird is because the Sega Genesis Mini sold better in the US than it did in Japan. So it seems odd that initially they were totally ignoring the US. This was originally announced as a Japan only console, and it sort of still is. Because what's happening is they're making a Mega Drive, which is the Japanese version, and a Genesis version. So, but they're actually shipping from Amazon Japan. So you can order them exclusively from the US Amazon store, but they're shipping from Amazon Japan. So it's technically still a Japanese only release. They're just circumventing that by Amazon, the largest retailer in the world. And they said that it's not going to be available for a long period of time, I guess. I assume they're going to make, whatever the pre-orders are and some more on top of that available. And once it's gone, which is very different than the strategy with Genesis Mini, which was everywhere.
Yeah.
You had no, other than it's selling out on Amazon or Walmart or whatever, you could get it anywhere. So it was pretty widely available. And I don't know, I think this must tie into the Game Gear Micro that they did, which looked awful. They were tiny keychain size Game Gears that you had to attach these big magnifying glasses to play. And they only had a couple of games on them. Those were only released in Japan, and they were very expensive. And they only had a couple games on them, and it was like 4 different variations. So you had to buy all 4 to get all the games. And they were like $100 or something like that. Like, it was a weird thing, but apparently those did well in Japan. So I guess their strategy is, to push this for Japan. So I was excited when they announced that there is a North Americanized version of it. I'm not excited to have to pay the Amazon Japan shipping prices because it is not Prime shipping because it's shipping from Japan. So it's going to cost over $100 with shipping. So that's not great. Because I think the original Mini probably launched at like 80, and you could just go to a store and get it. So there was no shipping involved in that. The one thing that is exciting about this, though, a couple of people mentioned, and as you added, well, it's a little bit smaller. So it's physically modeled after the second generation Genesis. There were 3 major redesigns or 3 major designs of the Genesis, the original version, a slightly slimmed down second generation, which is this is based off of, and a much smaller third generation, which the third generation actually couldn't take the add-ons that Genesis was famous for. Sega loved add-ons to their hardware, Sega CD, 32X, and so on. They even had a vest you could wear that had speakers built into it, so it felt like you were getting hit by stuff. I can't remember what that was called. Really weird stuff. They loved add-ons. The third one that was so small it couldn't take the add-ons. Um, so this is based off that second generation. It is more powerful though, and what's interesting about that is we're getting Sega CD games added to it, which is pretty exciting for me. I think Sega CD is super overlooked. The two main add-ons to it, the Sega CD and 32X, I think are incredibly underrated. Sega CD, it wasn't a failure. It did very well, but Sega put all their eggs in one really weird specific basket of interactive movies, which is what they really thought the future of gaming was going to be. So they're probably like 80% of the games released for it are these interactive movies, because that's what Sega believed the direction the industry was headed in. So it's mostly remembered for that. There's tons of other games for it and lots of great games, and it sold really well. But because they tied themselves to this style of gaming that didn't last, I think that's how people think of it. Unlike the 32X, was just totally different thing. But with Sega CD, I just think it's because they bet on the wrong horse kind of thing, even though the system was actually a success and it was pretty widely adopted. I remember a lot of my friends had Sega CD. Sega CD games were everywhere. But again, that type of game never really took off. And just in people's heads, that's where what they link it to.
But yeah, opening up the world to Sega CD and 32X, of course, opened the door, and included on this package is a game that we've talked about before, dedicated a show to, as a matter of fact, Night Trap. So if you weren't sold before, you're going to get Night Trap with this.
That was one of the last ones officially announced for this. Originally, I think they announced it was going to be like 50 games. It's actually over 60 that have been announced for it. So even more games than they said was going to be on it. And again, I'm fully expecting there's going to be unlockable stuff and multiple versions of games, just like the first one. I think everybody's anticipating that. But Night Trap it had to be on there, and at the same time is completely shocking that it's on there. It had to be on there because it is really, people point to Mortal Kombat, Doom, and other games that caused controversy, but it really was Night Trap that kicked off the Senate hearings. And then what happened was Night Trap kind of kicked that off, and then Mortal Kombat came out and exploded. So that became kind of the focus, but it was Night Trap that really started it. And you can actually find like elected government officials telling people that Night Trap is going to destroy the world, essentially, just bring down Western civilization as we know it. It is an interactive movie game because that's what Sega got behind. It was actually not, you wouldn't think this playing it because there's tons of Sega stuff in there, but it was actually developed as a VHS game. I don't know if you remember those, Kelly. They were
Yeah, so we had one at one point in time. It was like a murder mystery one.
okay.
Game with tape. Yeah, not great.
Yeah,
Not a
and
great
and
user
this
experience.
Night Trap really wouldn't have worked because well, first off, it was for those style of VHS games, it was incredibly high budget. You wouldn't think high budget when you watch Night Trap now, but for that style of game was a high budget production starring Dana Plato, which is why I brought her up in there. She is famous for being in Night Trap, and also she was in the movie Poltergeist. Unfortunately, she was killed after Night Trap came out, unrelated to the game. But that was another thing that unfortunately politicians tried to use as a thing to deter you from playing a video game. This totally unrelated person dying. So one of the things with it though would have happened with Night Trap is you would have had to have switched between multiple tapes while you were playing it. So just to make it even more cumbersome of an experience. So needless to say, that project totally fell apart. And the company that made it, Digital Pictures, had all of this footage though, including Dana Plato, and that wasn't cheap at that time because this is, post Poltergeist and things like that. So that was not a cheap production for them. So that's when Sega, thinking interactive movies are the way to go, kind of stepped in and they were like, hey, can you shoot some extra stuff and tailor this for our Sega CD? And it'll work a lot better because you can just put video footage on a disc. and people will be able to jump back and forth. Essentially, the way the mechanics work, and a lot of these games work in a similar fashion. Essentially, the way that it worked is you are supposed to be monitoring this house, and these people are going to be attacked by these vampire creatures that in the game are called augurs, that I believe that senators thought were rapists if you watch those hearings, but instead they are vampires who are just guys with stockings over their face, and they creep up behind people by walking like this in big exaggerated Scooby-Doo-esque motions behind them. And basically what you have to do is switch back and forth between these cameras, which again would have been different video cassettes in VHS form. While the movie plays out in real time, you have to keep switching back and forth between them and try to catch these people in traps before they kill the characters in the game. While the movie itself, like the 2-hour movie or whatever it is, all plays out in real time. So essentially you have to play it over and over and over again to kind of learn where they're going to be and learn the patterns, because you're just going to continually lose as you play through it. But it is super fun. The over the top, campy late 80s, early 90s, just awful acting, ridiculous gameplay mechanics. And I mean, these traps that you spring that, you know, were so violent we had to spend millions of taxpayer dollars for, are things like pulling a lever and the stairs flatten out and the people slide down the stairs like a kid's cartoon and stuff like that. It's great. It's amazing, cheesy, campy fun. I'm so excited that it's on here. But again, given the game's history, it's incredibly surprising that it's included. But again, it is, if you ask people to name a Sega CD game, it's going to be the first or second thing they say.
That'd be cool. So don't often challenge Dr. Mike on things, but so for Dana Plato, I'm certainly familiar with her work in Night Trap, and I'm familiar with her work in Different Strokes. But Poltergeist, really?
Pretty sure. Let's double check that.
Well, we'll double check that, and there'll be
It's
either
right
Mike
here.
was right or Mike was wrong.
Yeah, we'll just say both.
It's a choose
Like
your
those
own
celebrity boxing things where they film both people winning and then they choose which one they want to air.
Yeah.
This is a choose your own adventure episode, but I think that's right. She was in some horror movie. It's right there.
She was in like Bikini Car Wash or something like that.
Was she? No, I thought she died before she beat.
Yeah, so we're gonna we'll tell you what, folks. We will run her IMDb on the screen so you can see, and you'll find out my whole bikini something thing is she's in, and Poltergeist she's not.
Pretty sure it's Poltergeist. We're gonna say it's Poltergeist.
Okay, read the IMDb, you'll know. So, cool. Well, anything else?
No, I think that's it. Is this something you'd be interested in, sir? Were you a big like Sega guy at all?
So I wasn't. That just wasn't what console ever kind of popped up. It just kind of was Atari, Nintendo 64, kind of there, and then into the PlayStations, pretty much there. And so I just kind of, they always look good. These games look fantastic. So I've certainly had a chance to kind of play them like Super Console stuff and all that. But I think I'm gonna have to size up that shipping from Amazon Japan and see what we're talking about.
It's the only thing with it. I want to say it's like $20 or $25 or something for shipping. So it puts you over $100 for the cost of it.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards yes, but we'll see. Had Dana Plato been in Poltergeist, it'd have been a home run for me. But I tend to only buy game consoles with some member of that cast in a game. So,
which makes sense to me.
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, let us know what you folks think. Let us know if you're in the market for this, going to get it. And we'll catch you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.